November 17th. It is, going into week 4 of the college football season.
Is it really?
Martin and I got it is
week
hard
4?
to believe, but
shit. Rob,
it's so much fun, but a lot to talk about today.
Hewlett and Dunn sent me my new hat. I got my new hat.
I want to see the new hat. Show that box that Hewlett and Dunn.
I know.
They'll deliver. Awesome. It's an awesome hat box.
Fragile. It must be French.
It's from Italy.
It's from Italy.
It's from Italian. Yeah.
Italian.
But
Fragile.
you're going to have to put on that new hat, Richard Petty, this morning.
Oh,
we got Chris Lee, Southeastern 16.
All right.
Check in with us.
Rob, and I'll get this open.
All right. We got Chris Lee of Southeastern 16 checking into the first segment.
Golly.
South Carolina Gamecocks. What a fight they had with LSU. I think their defensive line is going to keep them in every game this year. Got to score more points. Got to get quarterback worked out. Also, Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, checks in, and Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. We will touch on all 16 teams in the Southeastern Conference. Smash that subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Allow notifications on your Android and iPhone. And get pen and paper handy. Going to take a lot of notes today.
You got to take
Brendan's
notes.
got some cool stuff.
Keep organized.
Yeah, keep organized. So ready, get set, get your ears ready. Let's go.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Mr. Brown, you're muted. Hey, Chris Lee, what's going on?
Hey, good morning.
How are you? Rob, you're muted,
Doing well.
sir. Robert Brown, host of the show, Sideline Sports. You there, Mr. Brown? We've lost Rob Brown. He got up in the middle before. Hey, it's okay. How are you, Chris? We haven't seen you in a long time.
It has been a minute. How are you? I like the hat.
I'm doing good. Yeah, thank you very much. From Hewlett. No, we hear you now, Rob. Well, we did. Now
I don't know. I disappeared there for a second.
We just couldn't hear you.
It's cool hat time right now, Chris. And
look how they ship it.
Nice.
That's a legitimate box.
This box
anything you want to keep.
Look at that.
That is.
There was some thought.
That is a real hat box. Yeah.
All right, here we go.
I don't think I've ever seen a hat box that nice.
Look at that.
Hey, let's get going, Chris. We've missed you the last few weeks. I know it's wild this time of year. Put that thing. You got some lower earphones for you?
Yeah, I got to get some lower earphones. Got to put my 10-gallon off.
That's a cooler hat. It's still hot this time of year.
Oh, so it fits.
It'll be.
Oh,
yeah.
Daddy's got a new pair of shoes
Chris,
now. Look at this bad boy.
It's like fitting Herman Munster for a hat, man. It ain't easy.
I miss a couple of weeks. I miss a lot, apparently.
Good. Want to go fishing?
Yeah. A lot going on.
Okay. Sorry. It's like Christmas for me. Hey, Chris Lee, what's going on? Why is Vanderbilt playing all great and stuff?
Well, they were until a week ago.
You there, Rob?
That Georgia State thing was another thing. But yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of a sign of what they are. They've improved enough to where they can beat a Virginia Tech, but they're still not arrived enough to where they can take a Georgia State lightly.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, Rob.
Doug Dean, our good friend on the show down in Birmingham, was crushed. His love affair with the Doors came to a crushing ending Saturday night in Atlanta. But are they better than the last few Vanderbilt teams that Clark Lee has had? I mean, they've got a quarterback who can keep you in every game. I believe Diego Pavia is a legitimate player.
Yeah, I feel like they're better. I feel like they've got a more workable plan. They can keep snap counts down. They can control the ball. They can keep it, keep their defense off the field, which is big. Now, their defense was the problem last week. Pavia gets them 2 touchdowns in the last 3 minutes, and then they give Georgia State, that they went 75 yards in 40 seconds and won the game. It was kind of absurd. You had some failures in coverage. I mean, they should have won that game. That they trailed the whole game, and then finally got the lead for a minute maybe, and then it was gone. But that was a pretty devastating loss. I don't really see there's a path for them to get to a bowl now, but it's going to involve 3 SEC wins, and I'm just not sure that they can bite that off, especially if injuries kick in. I mean, they lose Pavia, I don't know what they do, and he's taking a lot of hits.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. What's a good season for Vanderbilt, Chris? Realistically, right now, what's a good season?
5 wins maybe. You've got to win 4 games out of conference most of the time if you're going to have a shot at the bowl, then get 2 in conference, and you hope you catch like the teams that you would have wanted to catch this year, Mississippi State and Florida. They don't catch those teams.
They would like to.
Yeah, they'd like to. Oddly enough, they had Florida every year for the last 30 or 40 years, and now they don't have them now.
I know.
They got some national title contenders ahead, 3 or 4 of them, and I don't know. It's going to be tough. They're going to have to win at Auburn or something like that to be able to get there at this point.
Yeah. Have you so do you go on like the road games, or you just cover the home stuff?
No, I cover the home stuff. I've got too much I've got to watch.
That's what I do. Because I don't go on the road unless it's like playoffs and clearly the Gators aren't going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, when Saturdays, if I'm not, I'm usually set up watching 2 TVs and an iPad at once, and so going to a game kind of detracts from what I can do on the SEC end.
Yeah, I feel you.
Last night at the Touchdown Club in Memphis, Hunter Yurachek, Arkansas's athletic director, was there, and he said he has to lock himself up when he's not at an Arkansas game in a room with iPads and all these TVs going to watch college football. And he goes, I get to tell my wife, I have to do this, because he's on that 12-team college football playoff committee. He's one of the members of that. And, of course, he said there's certain games he can't, have anything to do with. He's got a son who coaches tight ends at South Carolina. He's got one on the football team at Arkansas, and he's got one who is, I think, a GA somewhere. But the bottom line is, man, when you're trying to do like Southeastern 16 and what we do, you are watching a lot of games. So I want to ask you about Kentucky, because you know a lot about that program. It's close to you. 1 week to the next, that's just life in the SEC, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's one of those things that I thought Georgia would win comfortably, but I did say, hey, let's look at past history. For the last 5 years, I think Kentucky has beat whatever the number was on that game. And, something like Alabama and South Florida, you saw that a couple of weeks ago. For whatever reason, South Florida just has an ability to keep that game closer with Alabama than you think. And Kentucky has always been able to do that with Mark Stoops, and did it last week. Now, I think I've got some questions about Georgia coming out of that game too, but it shows you Kentucky's still got some life. It's got a defense. It's got one of the better ones, I think, in the league. Now, I don't know if they can move the ball at all. I think that's going to be a question. I think they got more talent than is adding up, but I was about ready to bury Kentucky after last week, and maybe not so fast after this week.
Yeah, and I agree with you. 1 week to the next, that's the 3rd or 4th time in a row that Georgia's gone to Lexington and got out just by the skin of their teeth. I mean, do they just play down to the level of their competition, but they found a way to win? But I don't think that is a harbinger of things to come for Georgia the rest of the season. Do you?
I don't think so, but we do have some questions. I'm looking at some of the power ratings this morning, and look, I don't know that how much stock we can put into these. I don't know. These guys try to equate, beating the crap out of Kent State with, playing Georgia close. Yeah, and I don't know how you do that. But they and look, they're experts at it. I'm sure they got a way where they've made it work for the most part, but I don't think it works in every case. We've seen Georgia do this. They'll look a little bit ordinary every now and then, and then they'll come out and do what they did to Florida State in the bowl last year. So I think it's way too early to really know for sure. Perception going to the season is they were 3 or 4 points better than anybody else in the country. But the computers are saying a different thing at this point. But I mean, look, when you're there's just such disparate scheduling so far. I mean, let's look at what Florida's played and say, and I hate to pick on them, but what Tennessee's played or what Missouri's played. Although Missouri at least did play a ranked team last week. So, I don't know. There's a lot of football to be played.
There is, and we're going to bring Will Gunter on in just a minute from Columbia, South Carolina, 107.5 The Game, and does a statewide show covering the Gamecocks. And I like getting a couple of people together, and if we can keep you up to the half past the hour, love to get the interaction between you and the other guys covering these teams. But one more thing before we go to Will. When you look at what Tennessee did, I know that they're not playing tough competition last Saturday against Kent, but the efficiency – I think what's underestimated and underappreciated is the way their defense is playing.
Yeah. Their defense has given up under 4 yards of play. Now, again, they've played Chattanooga, Kent State, which Kent State is like the worst team in the FBS by far. And then throw in an NC State team that I think was overrated. But, a lot of people thought could maybe challenge for the ACC. They're going to get – well, they're not going to get the test I thought they were going to get with Oklahoma because Oklahoma's got big offensive line issues. But I think they are going to face a defense that's really good. You got Billy Bowman and Danny Stutzman on that back end. They're both first-team All-Americans. They're going to be on the road for the first time. We've seen some variability in college football this year. Nobody thought that Northern Illinois was going to beat Notre Dame. Nobody thought that Kentucky was going to play Georgia close. This feels like a game where Tennessee's got a decided advantage, but we've seen some things that tell us, hey, let's not make up our minds completely here.
Yeah, and again, those 2s and 3s on the depth chart that used to stick around the SEC schools to be developed, they're hitting the portal button and going somewhere else and showing up on the other side of the line of scrimmage before you know it. And that's what people aren't paying attention to, I think, more than anything.
Well, it feels like Tennessee's kept a lot of those guys, at least at the skill positions on offense. They're really deep at receiver with talented guys and some other places too. Now, look, they get an injury to Nico, speaking of depth. I don't know where that season goes because there's a big drop-off. You saw the second half when the backups played, and it looked a lot different. But that is the wild card there, just kind of as an aside, is if he gets hurt. And Tennessee's not the only team that you can say that about, but the drop off from the starter to whatever's next is season changing if we get there, and I hope we don't.
Yeah, and you look at Josh Heupel, his quarterbacks since he's been a head coach have I think it's 35 touchdown passes of 40 yards plus, which is the most in Division I. Notice I don't call it whatever else they call it. I call it Division I, Division II, Division III because it's so much simpler. All right, let's bring in Will Gunter from Columbia, 107.5 The Game, South Carolina. And look, Chris, this talk about teams 1 through 16, there's a cool story with every one of them. Like the background, Will, how are you? And I know, guys, I can't remember an 11 a.m. Central, 12 Eastern crowd that revved up. Most of the time, the visiting team has the advantage because people hadn't had enough to eat or drink or everything. They're getting there late first, early second quarter. Man, thumbs up to that crowd at Williams-Brice Stadium. All 16 teams bring a lot to the table. Let's talk about that game against LSU and where you go from here.
It's a good question. Thanks for having me on again. Going back to the crowd, that was what we suspected. I mean, I'll be honest. I know everybody says it about their fan base. South Carolina really does have one of the most passionate. And quite frankly, they don't get enough credit for the heavy drinking that they're willing to do. Of course, when you go through 118 years of football like they have gone through, that you develop a very good ability to drink. They were ready, man. It was a little bit of a mess. There was some stuff that wasn't shown in terms of what the students did to the area out there. But they were there. They were ready to go at 3 a.m. They were ready to go at 3 a.m.
Wow.
And look, college football is so interesting. I was listening to you two discuss Georgia. We don't know. All of us tend to pretend to be so smart and so knowledgeable, and we can pick a top 25, and we can pick this game and that game. And in my case, the Eagles last night just to win the game for some money, and I couldn't do that. College football, man, it's hard. It's hard right now. We don't know about these teams. We really, truly don't. And the example is South Carolina 2 weeks ago after the Old Dominion game. This fan base was going, boy, how are we going to win 4 games? We can't beat Vanderbilt. Look at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's beating Virginia Tech. We're not going to be able to beat Vanderbilt now. We got to go there. How are we going to even be competitive with Alabama and Oklahoma and Mississippi in October? And then you beat Kentucky 31-6, and now this fan base is going, hey, if we can only lose to Alabama, Mississippi, we'd be 10-2. We're in this playoff discussion. We can do this. And now this week we're going, okay, well, what is this football team? There was too many mistakes. Of course, right now the whole state's trying to figure out where those 9 officials live to go have a discussion with them. But officiating doesn't. You got to play. They made some stupid mistakes that cost them the game. There was some questionable calls, but they get a good week this week with Akron. We'll see what Lenore Sellers' availability is today. Shane Beamer will talk at about 1:00. They probably need to just go ahead and hold him out. They should be. Akron's bad. They're not Kent State bad, but they're bad. And South Carolina should be able to win that game with Robbie Ashford, who has quarterbacking experience. They should be able to run Rocket Sanders. And it might not be the 4-touchdown victory that Vegas is currently predicting. But get out of that game, get to your bye week. They get a bye week, and then get ready for Mississippi, which will be another wild environment here. It's going to be either a late afternoon 3:30 game, or it's going to be a night game. And that one they'll be revved up and supercharged, and they'll get a great list of recruits coming in, and it'll be a great chance again for South Carolina. I assume Mississippi's going to be. I think they should be top 3. They should win next week, and I think you got Alabama, Georgia. I think you got one other game that's Mississippi, because of not playing basically anybody and a process of elimination. I think should be right around 4-3 when they come into Williams-Brice Stadium, and another great opportunity for the Gamecocks.
Chris, your take on that? I like it.
2 things, and I've said this before, but it bears repeating. I think that we learned a lot about parity at the top of college football last year when the 2 teams that held the number 1 spot in November, Ohio State and Georgia, both didn't make the playoffs last year. I think anybody thinks we don't need a 12-team playoff, I would ask you to take a look at that. The officiating, I don't know if the criticism needs to be directed at the officials as much as the way they are asked to officiate the game. And maybe there should be some criticism directed at the officials, but I've seen a bunch of things. I saw targeting calls in the Vanderbilt and Florida games where guys got ejected that I didn't think should have been ejected. I mean, we're getting to the point where
I hate that call, by the way.
Oh, I do too.
I hate it.
Getting to the point where, like, what are you supposed to do? You're making a split-second reaction on a
impossible.
ball carrier or quarterback, and when you were going into a defender, you're going to dip your head a little bit unless you just stand straight up and hit him without.
Look,
I mean,
since you were 8 years old, I started when I was 8. When you're 8 years old, you're taught to put your side of your hat on as you go in and not drill them, but get the side of the hat on their midsection and wrap up, right? You talk to drive down, drive through the player and to tackle. Yeah. How are you supposed to not lead slightly with your helmet? And when said awesome athlete is doing acrobatics in the air and suddenly that slight shift goes one way, you're going to be helmet to helmet. Guess what? That's why you're wearing a helmet.
Yeah. You're moving 20 miles an hour or more sometimes, and you're asked to do something in a split second. I don't think world-class gymnasts can control their bodies the way they ask these kids. No, look, I think there's some that are obvious.
It up, right, Chris? Doesn't it open up to the referees? It's just too much in there. I think it puts too much in the, I don't mean to interrupt you, but gives it too much power back to the refs to make a judgment call when we don't have to make judgment calls. We shouldn't have to make that in today's age of technology.
Yes.
Right. You know what? I asked this question last night at the Touchdown Club in Memphis. I asked it to Hunter Yurachek, Arkansas's athletic director. I raised my hand, and I mean, it's like I'm the outcast now. I said, what are we going to do to stop the continued attempts to emasculate college football about all these activist officials that are just calling everything? Football is a violent, physical game played by tough, big, violent men. And I said, Vanderbilt thought it was cute 4 years ago to put the girl out there as a field goal kicker. I said, God forbid they tried a fake field goal around right end, and Takeo Spikes or Javon Curse had been waiting out there in the field for. They'd have hit her so hard, we'd have had congressional hearings about stopping college football. I mean, and of course, I got the narrative, and I understand player safety. Everybody's for that. But we've also got to remember, Will, that targeting call, the personal foul when South Carolina returned the pick six. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier could have made a play and tackled that guy. I mean, Will, what did you think?
Well, all right. There's a lot there. I don't know if we have enough time because there's only 24 hours in a day. But the bottom line is, let's just start this. The rules are being made without knowledge that the speed, the strength, the ability of these guys is changing. I mean, we're talking about what 30 years, not 30, God, 50 years ago, you had offensive linemen that were 240, 250 pounds. And now you got them up 350, 360. Defensive ends are freaks of nature. NFL defensive ends are free. I mean, we don't understand it because we're not those people who are 6'6", 6'5", 260 pounds, who run 4.5s. That's not human. It's not human, and it's not what college football was. And you have to adjust the game to fit that narrative of what it is. You're right. It is a barbaric sport if you want to go down that line. You play the game with an inherent risk of dying on the field. We're getting closer and closer to someone dying on the field because of a hit and being paralyzed and coming to an end right there. And I hate to say it like that way,
which we don't want to happen. That going in,
you don't put on a helmet and go hit somebody and go, "Oh wow, this hurts. This is physical." You know what you're getting into. It's just like if I hop on a motorcycle right out here outside the stadium and go, "Don't wear a helmet." That's on me. I know the inherent risks. It's football. Now, that's one side of it. Let me go to another side that's factual real quick, involving what y'all are talking about. And I can't speak to the Florida-Texas A&M game, but this was discovered in the SEC game for South Carolina LSU. Of the 9 the SEC this offseason hired 13 brand new referees. 13 brand new referees. I don't know where they came from. I don't know what their experience is, but I know that 4 of them were on the field for an SEC game here in Columbia last Saturday. Did they make some bad calls? Yes. Yes, they did. But why is your A crew not here in Columbia, South Carolina for that kind of game? You need to have an experience. It's a different level of officiating. And that goes back to what I just said, the speed, the power, the strength, the quickness that everything happens that you've got to make a decision on. It's like any of us out there. The first time we go out and try and do it, we're probably not going to be good at it. But the more games you get, the more reps you get. Even as an official, you get better. I don't want to say this was a complete failure on the SEC's fault, but it does appear that you could have had a staff down here that understood the importance of this game, what it was going to be like, and that it wasn't going to showcase poor judgment on the SEC's fault. I think that's interesting, and this league has got to get better. Now, look, let me repeat again. South Carolina didn't lose this game because of officials. They made some really dumb plays in that game, and I don't think the play calling was all the best. But I do mean to say that 10 points, pick 6, and probably a field goal were taken off the board by SEC officials because we don't know. We have no clue. And this is maybe where you hold officials accountable. Somebody after the game has to go talk to the media and say, well, we saw this. This is why we called that penalty. Or this is why we called a downfield blocking when there was nobody blocking that negated a very long pass that would have put South Carolina in field goal position late in that game and at least run more clock out. Why are officials not held accountable? They're probably going to tell Shane Beamer what they saw. Why are they not? Why don't we get to hear? What is the secrecy?
Well, let me throw this one at you. What we've got now is we've got activist officials, it seems like. We've got activist student athletes fueling all this House versus NCAA, activist attorneys. They found the activist athletes. The officials should not be bigger than the game. Chris Lee?
Again, I don't know if it is an officiating problem in terms of the guys on the field. I'm not saying it's not ever, but is it how the rules are written and what you're asked to do? And I'll give you another example. this one drives me bananas. And by the way, we've shortened the game, and yet games are going 4 hours anyway. So explain that one to me. And here's part of it. I think it was the LSU South Carolina game. I think it was an LSU kid that caught a pass late in the game, catches the ball, gets 2 feet in, has clear possession. And as he's going out of bounds, the ball lose 2 millimeters. Like, well, did he have possession of it? And we go on and minutes and minutes and minutes. And I'm like, back in the day when we grew up watching football, everybody knew what a catch was. That was a catch. Yeah. Now we go to this thing where everything is clean in bounds, but did out of bounds when he steps out, does the ball bobble just a little bit? I think that's another thing I just find ridiculous. And again, I'm hesitant to fault the officials because they're asked to call it a certain way. I just think that we have over legislated just so much of the game, and I think it is taking away from the quality.
Yeah, and here we go on that play you're talking. Wow, what?
I don't think that's. I don't know that that's the one. Maybe it is.
That's not it.
He's referring to the end. Yeah, he's referring to the end when Kyron Lacey catches a pass.
Yeah, we'll get
down around the 2-yard line, and what he did is he caught it one-handed. He got both feet in, but as he went to the ground, got a desk here. His hand hit the ground.
Yeah,
it was a catch. It was everything, and you're right. And and now listen, as a South Carolina fan, I will say that gave the Gamecocks, because they did the review, a chance to go down there and talk about it was a free timeout essentially for South Carolina trying to hold on for dear life in that game. And it almost worked. It didn't though.
Yeah. What's it like the 2? Well, how about 2 minutes left in the game?
Yeah, right. After this series, I believe it's going to be this pass right here.
Yep.
Down there, he's going to catch it. Lacey's going to catch it right there. Yep. And he's in. Ball had popped out. You got to go to the replay there. Our guy's jumping around thinking he knocked it out of his hand. He did not. Here's 1-2, goes to the ground. Now all of a sudden the ball comes out, and you'll see a great vantage point right there. All right, now the ball's out. There was no question about that. It went to review and so forth and so on.
Yep.
Well, we're looking at officials. I made a comment one time 30 years ago at a quarterback club meeting in Memphis. I said back then, 30 years ago, I said in the mid-'90s, the problem is we got a lot of old, overweight, fat officials who cannot keep up with the game. Little did I know that the head of that particular conference's officials was sitting 2 tables over from me, and he was a big, fat feller, and he stood up and said, you know what? He goes, I can't disagree with you. He goes, and that's, they're not keeping up with the game. It's like the carry forward laws for tax purposes. You can only take $3,000 a year. You're going to carry that off for 5,000 years to get to zero? I mean, we've got to adjust to what's happening. The guys are bigger, faster. Listen, Dan Williams was at the Touchdown Club last night. He's a member of the Touchdown Club. Played at Tennessee. I go, what years were you there? He said, 05, 6, 7, 8, 9. I said, same school, 5 years, redshirted. He goes, yes, sir. First round draft pick. Played 7 years in the NFL. I'm going to tell you something. He is working on his MBA now. Great young man. Starting a literacy foundation in Memphis. Tennessee grad, getting his MBA at University of Memphis. I'm going to tell you what, that guy, he could run through a brick wall, and he still looks like he could play. The athletes have got to take into consideration. We know what a catch is. And I don't like there to be a narrative. We can't take the worst case narrative and make that common for all of us, because the officiating, South Carolina, they've got a pretty damn good team, Chris. Would you and Brendan agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think South Carolina kind of is what I expect them what they always sort of be. They're like right there of being really good. They're in a lot of close games, and the developing program, I think, it's really important to be there at these games, because those will turn to wins. These tough losses and things, they turn to W's eventually, and I think that's a big locker room thing. I mean, look, you're talking about going to watch a game in South Carolina. I mean, that's awesome stadium.
It is
fun fan base. It's a really great, obviously a great place to go to school. So in today's world, South Carolina's sexy. You know what I mean? Lots of money, lots of things to do. It's a great place. These are emerging programs. So
they are. Chris, I know you've got a heart out right now. Let people know how they can follow you, and let's get you back on next week. This is great conversation, and we'll come back to you for some closing thoughts.
Yeah, go to YouTube, search Southeastern 16, year-round coverage of football, baseball, basketball. And by that, I mean we literally do a basketball and a baseball show every week in the offseason in addition to wall-to-wall football. No, we don't. But in addition to wall-to-wall football. So if you like your SEC to 30,000-foot view for everybody, come check us out.
Well, hey, thank you so much for being on here. Always love hearing from you. And I do watch your show, and it's great content. That's why you're on the show again and again. All right, Will, what Brendan was making a great point. Those will translate into wins. We got to put aside, everybody loves, I do. I'm just a Shane Beamer fan. I told you, because all my family from Virginia Tech. So his father, I love Frank Beamer, which means I'm pulling for him, for Shane. Talk about the mindset of this football team right now. What's Lenora Sellers? What's the prognosis on him? Dr. Gunter.
We'll learn that today, Shane. But I don't expect Shane to say very much. I mean, look, if we're being honest about it, you got Akron. If Akron's not good, they've been destroyed by Ohio State and Rutgers this year. I think they beat Colgate last week. They're not good. South Carolina should win that football game, and you get a bye week, and that leads you into the monster stretch of the season that'll be Ole Miss at home, at Alabama, and at Oklahoma in 3 consecutive weeks. You probably don't say anything today. You just say, all right, well, we're letting them progress day to day, and we'll make a decision on Friday. I do think there is an element of Lenora Sellers continuing to get reps that is very important for this Akron game. Maybe it's, maybe in an ideal world, he's healthy and he plays half the game so that he can just continue to play in college games and against college opponents, which, obviously is not going to be Mississippi, Oklahoma, or Alabama, but just get those reps so that he's ready. And then you get out of that first half, hopefully up big. But there's also an element of let him rest. South Carolina's offense is very one-dimensional without him. Robbie Ashford is a career 50% passer, and he backed that up on Saturday by being a perfect 2 of 4 to be a 50% passer. You're not gonna beat those teams. You're not gonna beat what I think are now very winnable games. I think are very winnable games for South Carolina against Oklahoma and Texas A&M and Clemson. You're not going to win those games without Robbie without Lenora Sellers. And South Carolina should exit this game with 3 victories. Vanderbilt's still on the docket, and Wofford is still on the docket. That should get you to 5. And then, as I just mentioned, those 3, and they're toss-up games now. And that is, again, Oklahoma, who I'm not impressed with. I've watched 2 weeks now. Texas A&M does not necessarily – I don't know if they'll get things right with the new quarterback there. And then we're still kind of seeing what Missouri is. I still like Missouri. And Eli Drinkowitz has had Shane Beamer's numbers, had South Carolina's number. But those are still things where South Carolina can have a magical season. And maybe get to 9 regular season wins, or get to 8 and go to a good bowl and win 9. But it's going to – Lenora Sellers is going to need to play for that to happen, and he needs to be fully healthy. He's got to be a threat in the run game.
What's his biggest strength? I mean, what do you have, a 75-yard keeper up the middle?
Yep.
That's 2 weeks in a row against LSU that's happened.
Yeah, and part of it is that the offensive line has to get better, continue to get better. I mean, Rocket Sanders had a 66-yard run as well for a touchdown. Yeah. But Sellers is it's just progressing. And quite frankly, some of it is with the receivers. He's got a true freshman in Mazio Bennett, who seems to be coming along. Vandravius Jacobs is a redshirt freshman from Florida State who I really like, who's going to be pretty good. They've got another guy that's a junior that transferred from Coastal Carolina named Jared Brown. It feels like the receivers are starting to flesh themselves out. We're figuring out who's going to step up and help this team and help Lenora Sellers. And again, you'd like to have him play a half this week to continue to develop that chemistry in the passing game. But if he can't go, don't force him out there and let him get injured again or aggravate that ankle. Go ahead. It would be basically, what is that? That'd be 21 days off almost that he would get.
Yeah, and I think what's happening with so many of the guys that used to stick around on your 2 and 3 depth chart that are leaving, here you are. Fortunately, you've got Robbie Ashford's a hell of an athlete. I don't think he's a great passer. There are not a lot of great passers out there, but you want a game like this where you play 70 or 80 guys, ideally, and give guys a rest. But where is Lenora Sellers from?
About an hour and 20 minutes from here, South Florence, but Florence, South Carolina.
Okay, where Marion, okay, where Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, is from. And George Allen, one of my pledge brothers, South Carolina guy. So when you look at it, and South Carolina right now, Akron, not a week off, it's a game, then a week off, then Ole Miss, and I'm looking for Yancy Porter. Rebel Yell Hotline will join us here in just a minute. Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider. Will, what are your fans over there? Clemson, we don't know what Clemson is right now. They're not the Clemson of 5 years ago. This is a great window for South Carolina, like when Steve Spurrier was there, to take a run. So it's going to be fun to watch. But, Will, we're going to bring in Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, get this discussion going. Tighter Insider, folks, it's only $48 a year. It's been that way. Rodney founded the magazine back in 1996, covers Alabama, also does a great TV show Tuesday nights, 6:30, WVUA TV 23 with our good friend Gary Harris, Tighter Insider TV. And Rodney, that trip up to the peninsula, man, I had y'all winning 31-14. Wasn't even that close.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't start off great, actually. It could have been a really close game at halftime. Alabama had that late drive there, 2-play drive at the end of the first half to score, to go up 21-3 after Wisconsin had just missed a field goal. So you're talking about the difference between 21-3 and 14-6 at halftime. And then Alabama gets the possession to begin the second half, and they go down and score, they convert. That's huge right there. That's huge. You've taken a potentially 14-6 game and turned it into a 28-3 game. So I think that was probably where it kind of the game kind of took off for Alabama.
And you go up there, it's a different environment, true road game. I mean, that's what I'm seeing so far out of Kalen DeBoer's first 3 games is a well-oiled machine. And you got a freshman who's not even 18, Ryan Williams, out of Saraland, another superpower football program. Who are some of the other players? Justin Haynes out of Buford, Georgia. Talk about that running back room. We know what you got at wide receiver, but the offensive line gets better. Everything else clicks.
Yeah, that's a great point about the offensive line, because I think that could be a story for this season. Actually, for Alabama, you got Caden Proctor, who made his first game appearance of this season, who, of course, he was injured a shoulder. He tripped and fell right before the game, in pregame, in the opener against Western Kentucky. He already had a little bit of an issue, and it aggravated it, I think. But anyway, so you got those 5 on the field. You got Pritchett that started at right tackle in place of Wilkin Formby. And Wilkin did play, and Wilkin did a nice job when he came in. So I think those guys will continue to kind of get reps together at that right tackle spot. But Pritchett did a nice job. So that came together. The running back room, as you mentioned, I think. Now, Jam Miller, we talked about him in the summer right here on your show, Rob. They say people over there in the building say he can go from 0 to 22 miles an hour faster than any back, or quicker than any back. It's been here in the last 15 years. That's saying something.
Yeah.
So, he's had a really good start, man. Runs with power, runs with speed, can catch the ball. Jam Miller's a name that I think is going to continue you're going to hear more and more about as the season goes on.
Can jump in here, Will Gunter, over at 107.5 The Game in Columbia, South Carolina. Rodney, love all this SEC talk. All of the Sweet 16.
Yeah, well, I guess on Alabama, it's interesting. I personally thought even with Nick Saban coaching last year, that the best coach in the country was Kalen DeBoer. You look at his lifetime record. I think he just needed a chance at a great place. I think one thing you're seeing with Alabama is there is a offensive philosophy change from what Nick Saban really liked and what he would let his offense coordinators do to what Kalen DeBoer does. And I thought personally, you saw that game at Wisconsin. It's starting to really take hold. I'll admit I did not watch a vast majority of the South Florida game 2 weeks ago. I only started watching when I realized it was a very close game going into the fourth quarter, I believe. And wanted to see if it was going to be a big upset. So I saw the offensive explosion from Alabama. I went, oh, okay, yeah, there you go. There's Milroe in that offense, and that's what they do. I caught a little bit of the Wisconsin game this week as I was going back and forth. I'll be down there on October 12th. I think we're staying at the lovely Roadway Inn, not far from the stadium. But I'm looking forward. I'm actually bringing my 15-year-old daughter. I want her to go see before she has to see any other campuses besides South Carolina. I want to take her and show her around Alabama and make that trip because I've been down there a couple of times and it's a good time. But I'm going to see that. And the guy that scares me now, besides Ryan Williams, obviously, is Jam Miller. I see him developing and progressing, and you've seen what Kalen DeBoer can do when he's got a quarterback who can run and throw. He's got that now with Jalen Milroe. He had it last year with Michael Penix. Last year he had Rome Odunze at Washington, which, again, Ryan Williams now, along with several of those other wide receivers. But you see what Williams is doing. And now he's got himself a running back who can carry the load if he needs to get into a physical, slug-it-out SEC game. I don't know if I expected Alabama in year one to keep the train rolling in the manner that they have. We'll find out next week. Next week's the big one. Georgia rolls into town. That place is going to be nuts. Game day will be there. It'll be that night game. And we'll see if Georgia was looking ahead a little bit. One eye was looking to Tuscaloosa and not locked in on Lexington, Kentucky.
Well, Rodney, all I can tell you is I hear that name, Jam Jones. Remember Ham, Lamb, and Jam Jones, the three running backs for Fred Akers' Texas team? I mean, Ham, Lamb, and Jam. That guy's he's already got NIL capability. Like Will said, that somebody needs to come up with a jam and jelly.
Yeah. No, I remember Ham, Lamb, and Jam really, really well. Back in the day, I was in Texas, but no, I think you made a good point Will made a good point about sometimes the pieces you can see them putting them together. And I think you kind of sense that right now with Kalen DeBoer, what he's doing. I think they found out a little bit more about their team over the last couple of weeks. And, I think in the South Florida game afterwards, Kalen DeBoer made a really interesting comment when he said, this is not a wake-up call at all. He said, we need these kind of games, but it's not a wake-up call at all, this one. He said it's just raising the standard. So it was basically, I felt like, he was saying, hey, we learned a lot about this team. We learned a lot about our team. Now we need to go and kind of take that next step. And I think in that Wisconsin game, again, it wasn't all clean. It wasn't defensively. They've got to get some things straightened out. I think right now you've seen flashes on the defensive line. And people say, well, they don't have the playmakers that they had. Now, they've got really good players, and they've got depth. But you're just not seeing consistency up front in the run game, run defense. And let me say this, Rob. They've given up 100. They gave up 206, I think it was, to South Florida, and 149 to Wisconsin. They got to get some of that defensive front. There's the talent is there. I mean, they've got good enough players. So they got to get that straightened up. And a couple of times they've been hit down the field. Well, fortunately, they haven't been hit, but they've had receivers running free for touchdowns. And they just haven't connected. But you know what? Carson Beck, the guy at Tennessee, Nico, those guys, they won't miss those throws.
Yeah. And up to this point, when you look at the quarterback play in this league, there's some nobody's got a quarterback room like Texas does, and it's crazy what they've got. But you don't want to lose your starter. Will, you're talking about the Jalen Milroe. If he goes down, what would they do? South Carolina, you're already seeing it Saturday with Robbie Ashford. Where do you, in terms of this SEC? Running backs, wide receivers. Can you name me, 3 running backs that will be first or second round draft picks in this league now?
Well, when you say it like that, obviously running backs in the NFL, you got to be really, really good to do that. I don't know. Is Travis Etienne? I get the first name of the Etienne boys now confused. I used to never do that. But Etienne at Georgia, is he a first-round back? Does somebody see value in him? I mean, I'll be honest with you. To take it a step further, how many first-round backs are there out there? I haven't looked at mock drafts.
That's the point.
I don't think
I don't. If you go across this country, if you go across the Power Four, I don't know how many legitimate first-round teams just aren't going to spend that on a guy. They can get a guy in the second or third round, pay him a little less, use them up by the time they're 25, 26, 27, and then spit them out and go on to another organization. Good Lord. I always go back. Look what happened to Todd Gurley. Look at what they did to Ty. There's few Adrian Petersons that can go as long as they do in the NFL now. There's another one. I don't remember who. Somebody else just retired within the last 2 months that kind of caught me off guard. It was a young guy. So yeah, these guys get used up in college, and it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, Rodney, what round was Derrick Henry taken out of Yulee, Florida? Over 12,000 high school yards he had, but was he late first round or second?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. I don't even remember. I think he was second, Rob. As good as he was, it would have been an early second. If it was, I can't even actually remember. There's so many of them. There's Ingram, there's Yeldon, there's
I know.
Derrick Henry, and I can't.
He was round two. He was round two, 45th pick.
45th. Okay.
I guess where I'm going with this is if you look at Trent Richardson out of Escambia County High School, the Gators in Pensacola, went number 4 in the April 2012 draft. And I saw last year Bijan Robinson, running back from Texas, went number 9 to the Falcons. Job and him have a lot in common. Boy, it's a tough out, but they pay you well. But I mean, Rodney, I'll throw this at you. This kid, Justin Haynes, out of Buford, Georgia, and Will, you know that Buford program, and you do too, Brendan. Georgia finally got a player, a 5-star last year, KJ Bolden. They had Dylan Raiola, the quarterback, and then he went to Nebraska once they found out his dad played at Nebraska. His uncle is the offensive line coach there. But how good is this Justin? Haynes is a big kid, isn't he?
He's about maybe 5'11", 200, 205. He's he's a thick kid. He runs. He's just really got great vision. I think that's the one thing about him that stands out is he's got elite vision. I mean, he can see a hole. He can find a crease that you don't even know it's there. He hasn't gotten a lot of touches yet. He only got, 3 or 4 in the first game, and he rushed for over 100 yards. He only got 2 in this last game, I think, for 17 yards. So he didn't get a lot of touches. Yeah. And Kalen DeBoer addressed that. There were some plays that the RPOs, different things that, would have gone to him. But the way the read went, he didn't get the touch. So anyway, I think as he moves along, he'll probably get, his touches have certainly increased. But yeah, I mean, he started this last game and the game before too. I mean, he was the first back in. They alternate around, he and Jam Miller. Justice Haynes is extremely talented.
Used to be, not that long ago, running backs were almost in tears if they weren't getting enough carries. Will, are you noticing now? It's like, just give me, 12, 14 touches. That's all I need. We have voluntary compliance.
Well, isn't it worse than that, though? It's worse than that now. Like ETN's come out. He's like, he doesn't block. I mean, he's told people, I don't block. So he told Napier. So he told.
Oh my God!
Story. He's. I don't want to block.
Yeah, it's changed in really the last 14 or 15 years. I know in particular here at South Carolina, a lot was made of it when South Carolina was recruiting Marshawn Lloyd and Tank Bigsby, and the reason was this one of the recruiting selling points was, hey, if we get both of you. It's not an and/or situation. We want both of you because we want both of you to combine for about 30 carries in a game, 15 and 15. Show what you can do, but we're not going to use you up. Everybody here, I think also here at South Carolina, it became noticeable with the Marcus Lattimore situation. Now, Lattimore got with some freak injuries, some kind of crazy injuries. Yeah. But you go back and Spurrier's running him 41 times against Georgia, 40-something times against Florida back in 2010. You get these kind of situations, and I think you see more and more running backs actually wanting to go to a deeper running back room because they can't leave after 1 year, and they don't want to take 300 college carries. What was it? Leonard Fournette got to what? His usage at LSU back in the day was absolutely insane. I want to say he was right around the 300 carry thing. College kids want to come in and essentially get close to about 80 carries a year at max, which isn't more than 8 to 10, depending on how the game's going. I was shocked. In the first game of South Carolina ran Rocket Sanders 24 times.
Yeah. Rodney, you think about it. 2013 Auburn, Missouri SEC championship game. Trey Mason out of Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, Lake Worth, 46 carries, 304 yards. Should have kept him in there. The all-time record for Auburn's 312 yards by Curtis Kuykendall in 1944, but I digress. Some running backs might carry the ball 46 times a year, and they can be drafted, Rodney, if they're at Alabama.
Yeah. Yeah, Derrick Henry, I'm thinking about him in the 2015 season after that. Well, in that Ole Miss game, I think Lane realized, you know what? Until there was 3 minutes left when Alabama had a chance to go down and win the game, they took the ball out of Derrick's hands. But Derrick kind of became that guy. I mean, you go back and look at I think he had 46 carries against Auburn that year. It was in the 40s. He, 40 plus against Texas A&M, close to 40 against Texas A&M. I mean, and you know what? That's what made Derrick Henry unique. He got better at carry 30 than he was at carry 15. I mean, he just an absolute freak player. I mean, just his stamina, his strength, and all of those things, and sustaining his speed throughout the game. I mean, there's not many like him. And you know what? He stayed. I know he's had, some injuries. He had one here actually, but just the way his body has maintained itself is really impressive.
Yeah, and looking around the league, I want to ask both of y'all right now. You got 6 of the top 7 in the rankings right now, and that's because we're not playing each other week in and week out. That's going to change. Who do you think are going to be the 4 top teams? And do either of y'all understand how this tiebreaker scenario would work? Will, I'll start with you because you're highly intelligent, you're professorial, and so is Rodney, as is Brendan. But Will, you want to take a stab at it?
I think it comes down to whose mascot can beat each other in a fight. I think is the final one. As you got me trying to figure. Yeah. Thumb wrestling. Mm-hmm. And it'll be televised too. You got me writing down. I've done a little bit of this, and it's Texas. You said the 4 teams: Texas, Georgia. Look, I'm impressed with Alabama. I don't know why I'm impressed with Tennessee because they haven't beaten anybody. They haven't played it. We have no clue. We have zero clue what Tennessee really is. They're out there to just banging out Chattanooga and Kent State and now NC State. But NC State was down. What was NC State down? I think 14 at one point this weekend to Louisiana Tech. They needed everything they had in the tank to take out Western Carolina in week 1. So I don't know how good NC State is, but Tennessee, at least, I don't know. They're just crushing people. Ole Miss is beating people to where they don't want to play Ole Miss anymore. And then you've got Alabama who, look, I mean, I'm not going to – again, I've already said it. I think Kalen DeBoer is the best football coach in the country. If you made me pick 4 right now, it would be Texas, Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee. That's the 4 I'd go to, leaving out Mississippi, and we'll learn more about Missouri in the coming weeks as well.
Rodney?
Yeah, Will probably knows more about Tennessee than I do. I mean, I've watched a little bit of them. They're extremely explosive. I know they haven't played anyone yet, but I'm going to hype them up a little bit. I've got Texas number 1. I had them number 1 last week just in my, thoughts. So I got Texas 1. I've got Tennessee or Georgia. They're right there at 2 or 3. And if you press me today, now this is today, I'd have Ole Miss number 4, and I'd probably have Alabama 5 today.
Yeah.
But I see the potential in this Alabama team, since I'm talking from an Alabama perspective. I see the potential in this Alabama team to say, you know what? They might have as much potential as any team in the league, to be honest with you. But I think Texas right now, I go with Texas number 1. I just think they're whether that's with Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning so far. But I go with Texas number 1. I think because of their ability to strike, score points. I think that they're, I give them the edge right now. But I don't, Georgia, they didn't look very good. Obviously, I think they look like they don't have playmakers outside, real explosive playmakers, which might be an issue for them. But I still expect them to be, they're Georgia. It's Kirby Smart.
Yeah, you're right.
Hey, Will,
I know you got to check out.
You got to remember, Georgia has one of these odd games every year. Last year was South
Yeah,
Carolina.
they
They were down 14-3 at home in, I think, week 3. 2 years ago, they were on the road at Missouri, and I want to say it was 22-12 there. 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and Georgia had to score 2 touchdowns late. When they put up these odd performances early in the season and get themselves out of it. I'm not going to sell out Georgia. I saw what they did when they had to get motivated for Clemson. Not that I think Clemson's world beater. I'll just point this out real quick. I'm sitting here kind of making some notes as y'all are talking. You look at Texas. They've beaten Michigan. I don't know what Michigan is. Georgia's beaten Kentucky. I legitimately have no idea what Kentucky is because I've seen them play South Carolina and Georgia in 2 entirely different games. Tennessee again. They've beaten NC State. What is NC State? I have no clue. And Alabama, I don't think Wisconsin is the same Wisconsin I'd seen for years under Paul Chryst and going back even further with that. Luke Fickell, I thought he'd be a little bit more of a success there. But all 4 teams, 3 of those have thumped that opponent, Michigan, NC State, or Wisconsin. Georgia's got the close one against Kentucky, and I don't buy it. We're still trying to figure out what this college football season is, and who is what, and what is who. There's a lot that I think with the transfer portal, with the new age of college football, it's going to take us into November before we have an idea of what matters and what doesn't.
Yeah. Well, how can people follow you? We'll let you go, and we'll do it again next week.
Definitely. At Will, WIL, Gunter, GUNTER. Of course, you can always download our app, the 107.5 The Game app, and listen wherever you're at, wherever you're watching. And we're on from 6 to 9 Eastern time each morning. So if you don't have something you like listening to, you can throw us on. Obviously, we talk a lot of South Carolina. We're going to try and create a rivalry this week because we're bored with Akron. I think we're going to just figure something out there.
Here you go.
My kind of thing. If you need help, let me know.
Yeah,
I got a couple
of drank heavily.
During the Will Muschamp era, we were up, I think, 28-0, and Muschamp didn't take the players out. It's his fault, but we're going to blame Akron for breaking one of our offensive linemen's leg, I think, in 2018 or 20, something like that.
Perfect.
But no, we do it. Talk obviously a lot of college football and look around the world, and we're just on a countdown right now till Billy Napier gets fired. So that's also
that's right.
we entertain ourselves. We haven't put up a clock in the studio yet, but we will.
Yeah.
We will.
We should. It won't
The
be.
watch is on.
You don't need a clock that goes very far in the future. So
No. Well, be good. We'll do it again next week, man. I'm gonna listen to your show in the morning. I like that.
Appreciate it. Anytime. Thank y'all so much.
You bet. Hey, Yancy Porter's going to come on here for a few minutes. I had sent him, Rodney. I know I love to get the dueling guys on here, and I had sent him 9:30 a.m. Central. I do so many guests Eastern and Central times. My apologies. Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Catch it Monday night, Sports 56 WHBQ and Super Talk Mississippi. Rodney, we'll bring in Yancy for about 10 minutes here. Yancy, let's talk about Ole Miss. Will Gunter over in Columbia, South Carolina. They got Akron a week off, and then the Rebels come to town. He thinks y'all will be 3 or 4 in the country, but give us the perspective. What's going on? I talked to Gordon Ford yesterday. He's looking forward to coming on. A lot of good things happening down in Oxford.
Yeah, they just look really like a good, complete team right now. I think everybody would like to see one more corner kind of step up and maybe another running back. And that's kind of nitpicking if you're looking for flaws with the team, but they look good right now.
What are you seeing? That game at Wake Forest, right before the game, Wake Forest said, we're not going next year. Rodney, I don't know if you heard about this, but we're not going to Oxford next year. They're going to pay like $1 million to get out of that game. Man, what in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here, Slim Pickens?
Yeah, it's kind of tough. Next year's schedule was really set up nicely. You were playing Southern Cal, at Southern Cal to open the season, and they were returning to Oxford next year. That game, Southern Cal wanted out of that game this summer, got out of it. Now Wake Forest, and Ole Miss is. I told you before the season started this year, what a boring schedule really to start the season. Kind of wake me up when it gets around October. And now, it's going to be tough to fill those holes with Power 5 teams, with good teams this late in the game. So we'll see.
Rodney, you ever heard of, 2 teams backing out like that before? What's the contract worth?
I'm sorry, Rob. I lost track of what you were talking about. I got diverted here for a minute.
Oh, sorry,
Say
man.
that
No,
again.
it was just pointing out. I said, Wake Forest before the game last week, which Ole Miss trounced them in Winston Salem, they wanted out of having to come to Oxford next year, and now he said that Ole Miss was supposed to open up with Southern Cal in Los Angeles next year, and then a return game to Oxford. Southern Cal's getting out of that. I mean, if
Well,
I'm an Ole Miss
yeah.
season ticket holder, I got a good case of the red ass.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, man. I'm looking at Alabama's future schedules. Not really looking at them, but thinking about them. And Rob, they've got Ohio State on future schedules. They've got West Virginia that's already talking about backing out of the schedule that they have. I think Saban wanted that game, obviously being from West Virginia, but
Yeah,
Florida State next year. Some games that are on their schedule. Notre Dame in the future. I look at it, and I've talked to some people about this, and you see those games, and you're thinking, man, the SEC is brutal. I
yeah,
mean, two losses, you can get into the playoff with two losses, but not three. Not likely.
no, yeah,
Maybe, but not likely. So here's what I'm saying is, man, I'd be dropping those games. I mean,
yeah,
because if you're in the SEC, that's just me. I'm not talking about Ole Miss dropping Wake Forest, but or vice versa, whatever. But I just think, look, man, I hate to say it, but playing those games, I don't know if they're going to be beneficial to you. Not in the SEC. I mean, because I'm looking at these teams now. This is a rough schedule.
yeah. Yancy, you look at Ole Miss's schedule this
Yeah.
year. I mean, you've got Georgia Southern Saturday, then Kentucky, at South Carolina, at LSU, off. Oklahoma comes to town, at Arkansas, Georgia in Oxford, off, at Florida, and you finish out in the Egg Bowl against Mississippi State. Y'all seem to be the one school in this league that has the back end loaded schedule almost every year.
Yep.
Uh, would not like that as a coach. I'd like to know early on, what are we? Agree or disagree?
I agree, but I think right now you can pretty much see what they got.
Oh yeah, it's pretty obvious.
But you're right. I mean, you would like kind of spread out and get tested early. At South Carolina is going to be a great game. It's going to take a great defense. I'm talking about very elite defense to be able to just kind of slow this offense down that Ole Miss has right now. And South Carolina's really aggressive defensively. They got two first round guys on the defensive line. They got a first rounder there at safety. They're going. That'll probably be a really good test for them. We all know at LSU, is Ole Miss has struggled through the years at LSU these last 10, 15 years. So that's going to be another great test for Ole Miss. But you're right. I mean, on the front end, it's very weak. Um, it is what it is. But you look at what Ole Miss is doing. They're first in the country in points allowed. They're second in the points, second in the country in scored points. They're first in the country in total yards on offense. They're eighth in the country in yards allowed. On down the line, they're top five just about every category there is. Um, they've got they've got elite playmakers at every level on offense and defense right now, and that's kind of what makes them so scary.
All right, Ole Miss has the greatest fundraising weapon right now for NIL that I can think of. You know what that is? Because we got a lot of Gators on this channel, Gator Bait Media, the Buddy Martin Show, Best Fridays in Football, along with in my show here. We're all on the same channel, building a
Yeah.
great network. A lot of Florida people thinking
Oh
Lane
yeah.
Kiffin is going to leave. Just like they did 2 years ago when the Grove Collective exploded, Rodney. There's a lot of money. I just don't see Lane Kiffin wanting to leave. Now, they can say, yeah, we've won national championships. Florida's got a lot to offer. It's an awesome job. But what do you think will happen? Because you've got a very good read on what goes on in Lafayette County, Mississippi.
Well, it was all very predictable.
Yeah.
That's first. I mean, they have planned for this for many, many months. We all know that their staff was on the hot seat and they had arguably the toughest schedule in the country. I mean, it was just, if it was something that was more like what happened with Auburn, where it was bam bam, and it just
Yeah.
kind of came out of left field. But they've been well ahead of this, and um, if Lane were to ever to leave anywhere, it would not be because of money, because there's no one that is going to outpay Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. I don't care what number you throw out there or how long the contract's going to be. Ole Miss will match and plus it. So that's not going to be a worry. It's all going to
Yeah.
come down to the NIL, the war chest for any school, not only for Lane Kiffin, but for most of these elite coaches. And, the Ole Miss feels very good right now. Against anyone with on that perspective too. So, you take those two factors into consideration. You factor in that his son's moving from LA or out there in California to Oxford. He's going to be moving in with Lane in the spring. He's building a house for his daughter here in Oxford right now. He's built another house in Oxford. It really doesn't add up.
All right, and it's we know Tuberville left that time for Auburn, but Rodney, when was the last time in history that you can remember in your lifetime that Alabama lost their football coach to another school because of money?
I don't know about money, but I remember Dennis Franchione bailing out really well.
Well, but were you glad for that or what?
No.
Okay.
No.
See, that's what. Yeah.
We could go into. I could, like I said, there's a chapter in my book about Dennis Franchione, but no, he was never comfortable here. The scrutiny was too much for him. But so it wasn't really money, although he did, because I knew Coach Fran really well, and he shared a lot of things with me. He told me, he said, look, and this is, we're talking over 20 years ago. He said, the biggest problem with Alabama is they have we're Alabama mentality. Okay. Yeah. Where at that time, he said, we're in a facilities race. It's like an arms race. And he said, we're in a facilities race, and I got these people, I'm twisting their arms that we need new carpet, we need new walls, paint on the walls and all this stuff. He said, they won't give me the basics because we're Alabama. Yeah. And he said, it's frustrating. So the handwriting was kind of on the wall. But to your question, I remember Franchione bolting extremely well.
Yeah. Well, I think back, Rodney and Yancy, Alabama had an athletic director back in the mid and late 90s named Bob Backrath. Our kids would refer to him as Mr. Krabs. Yeah, from Mr. Krabs at the Krusty Krab. When they asked to spend money on athletic facilities and all, he go, "Hey, you don't need money for that. Get back there and make some Krabby Patties." But it's amazing to me that Alabama or Ole Miss would have an athletic director. We can't build facilities. That was 30 years ago. And I'll throw this one to Rodney and then to Yancy. Are we seeing a pause in the arms race for brick and mortar facilities and shifting that money to NIL at Ole Miss, Yancy? I think we are.
Well, I mean, no question they are. Now, having said that, they just put in, close to $50 million into their IPF, their practice facility. And, that's really more of where colleges are leaning right now towards upgrading is the facilities that the players use. The stadium part, I mean, honestly, the players just don't really, they play in there, 7 Saturdays a year, and that's it. Everything else is where, they practice every day. Their locker rooms, their TV, their eating facilities, their training facilities, all that kind of stuff. So I think you'll continue to see schools really hone in on what they use every day. And you're going to see stadium upgrades. I think Ole Miss is about to have another one coming up pretty soon.
Okay.
But I don't think it's going to be an arms race like we've seen the last 20 years. Obviously, everything right now is focused on your NIL.
Rodney, Tuscaloosa, the state of the facilities race there.
Same thing. I mean, he summed it up really well. And it's the same thing at Alabama. I mean, you look at basketball, they've been crying for a new arena around here since the day Auburn got theirs, right? I mean, and it's not happened. But what did Nate Oates want when there was some chatter about Kentucky? Nate Oates wanted this training facility, as Yancy alluded to, the everyday facility and he wanted this training facility that they got going right now. Their building is going to be a major addition to the basketball facilities.
Yeah.
So,
well,
because he knows the value of NIL. Yeah. I mean, it's like you said. So, yeah, I mean, it's that's certainly the direction it is right now.
Oh, look, let me just say this, folks. Great show as always, and follow our guests and post their stuff, retweet it, and we appreciate y'all retweeting. We'll do yours. Help each other grow our brands. Guys, support our sponsors like Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. HouseIndustriesInc.com. Exo Armor, folks. We talk about player safety. Exo Armor, based in Auburn with a national and global reach, using the 3D printers to make casts and braces that can be done in real time during the games. If you are a coach of football or any sport, do yourself a favor and hit that QR code right there. Exo Armor, custom 3D scanning and printing. Wow, they are doing a lot of great work. Player safety, it's getting better than it's ever been. The equipment and all coming out. And all of our sponsors at Sidelines.live, the Vitamin Shop in Oxford and Olive Branch, Mississippi, Tom Martin's Body Shop, and just all of our sponsors are here. We support them. They make this happen. And these great guests that we have, Yancy Porter and Rodney Orr of Tider and Cider. Hey, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Tune out all the negativity. Junk in, junk out. But I say this, listen to people like Yancy and Rodney and Brendan Martin and the Buddy Martin Show later tonight on this same channel at 9 p.m. Eastern. Will Gunter, Chris Lee of Southeastern 16. Got another great show tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. We'll see you in the morning.
Now more than ever, it is so important to shop local and to buy American. For 60 years, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company has been on the historic Collierville Square, and we strive to sell made-in-the-USA products when available. With over 7,000 pairs of Western boots and work boots in stock for men and women, come and see our huge selection of clothing, jeans, and accessories from top brands made in the USA. Please support local business and come shop with us at Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. God bless the USA.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.